process of exploring the gene keys for the first time for me was a very organic one. It's a huge tome, and there was a lot of people in my life that brought the gene keys to me at different times, and I looked at it and I was like, oh, it's another iteration of the I Ching, you know, this one guy's perspective on the I Ching, and that's pretty interesting, and he's relating it to codons and to the whole DNA process and genetic process. Interesting stuff. I'll look into it at some point. Well, years passed, and I never really dove into it, and then I found that it started showing up all over in my life. It started surrounding me, and it was being presenced by all of these people around me, and suddenly they started unfolding for me these little keys and how to dive into it and how to explore it. And the first piece of that was getting my hologenetic profile. And I looked at my hologenetic profile, and it's very occult looking, it's mysterious, you know, there's all these spheres and all these different keys in these different positions, and yet there's a simple pathway through it. You know, you start at the top and you travel through these activation sequence keys, and then you go into the inner zone of the Venus sequence, the deeper emotional realms and subconscious realms of the self, and eventually find your way to the Pearl, this sort of spiritual field of keys that help to define and crystallize the core essence of who you really are. And I was like, well, that's cool, I can work with that. And I read a few keys that I noticed I just had multiple ones in the chart, and I started to feel like, wow, there are some really potent realizations in these. And not just potent because the language was potent, or because it was written in a good way, or an intelligent way, or because I related to the shadow that was being expressed, and I could see and feel this gift sort of emerging out of that shadow, and I recognized my own process of kind of overcoming my issues by utilizing those gifts and then actually working to transcend the gifts and transcend the shadows themselves. And I came to understand that sort of initiation and enlightenment process that is inherent in the keys. But I didn't really get it until I fully read my first key in the activation sequence. And it wasn't just reading it, it was the timing in which I read it. And it was the connection between the feeling of needing to read that key and a transformational moment in my life that had happened right before it. And the key was grace. The Siddhi of Grace. And that key for me, as I began to read it and unfold its process, I recognized that key 22 is not just like one of the other gene keys that I had read, which usually comprise a couple pages, a look at a shadow, here's a gift that transforms the shadow, and then here's this like divine state you can reach if you truly overcome that shadow and that gift. No, key 22 is 22 pages long, and it is an exploration and look at the entire evolutionary process of spiritual awakening and enlightenment. It goes from all of these different spiritual traditions and these different stages of initiation and enlightenment looked at by different cultures and time, and it frames it through portals like Christianity, through portals of Kabbalah, through portals of Taoist enlightenment and Hindu enlightenment, and the fusion of these different perspectives on transformation itself and on spiritual enlightenment itself actually reflected my entire life's process of looking at spiritual enlightenment and self-awakening and the realization of the self as divine as my fundamental life work. And here it is, in my life work point, on my activation sequence. It's the first key on the chart, and yet it's the most profound key of my existence. My purpose, my deepest work in the world is to help to unfold the gift of self-realization within every person that I meet. And I've realized that there's a different way to do that with each person. You can do it as a teacher, you can do it as a sage, you can do it as a playful gesture, you can do it through communion, you can do it through direct transmission, you can do it in so many different ways, and there's no way that's the only way or the right way. And a lot of, I feel like, misconceptions about spiritual teachings and spiritual teachers over time is this idea that there's like this avataric being who comes down and just blesses you, and you suddenly know, oh my God, I'm Source. And that happens. But it's not always how it happens. Sometimes it's a crossing in the desert sands as the wind brings you to a person you've never met before, and you look in their eyes, and the sparkle there, and the power there, and the connection there elicits words that come forth and bubble forth that somehow synchronize with moments of their experience that relate to a deep, deep realization that they're having in their life, and suddenly they recognize that everything is somehow interconnected, and that that moment had divine purpose for them, and it transforms them. And when you get to be a being who has the opportunity to share that gift with someone, as they see themselves for the first time as part of this tapestry, this fabric of divinity, perfection, grace, and you get to watch, as I have watched in myself, my deepest, darkest fears inside of myself, my deepest, darkest judgments that I have placed on myself, believing that I've been evil even at times in my life. When those places that are dark and cold and lost have an opportunity to, in a moment, surrender themselves, to let go and open up enough that you might actually recognize that it's perfect, that it's okay, and grace comes, and you know it. That is the gift of what life is all about. That is the meaning of life for me. It's to transform, to transfigure, to move into those spaces and create just enough and surrender just enough. Grace happens. And I get to realize who I am. And so do you. We get blessed. We get blessed.